Okay.
It just makes a noise.
All right. Now the light's on, Levy. You ready?
Thank you. Good evening. I would like to call to order the meeting of the Budget Committee for May 4th, 2021 at 6:09 p.m. We apologize, there were some technical difficulties that had to be worked out through, but we'd like to get started now doing the roll call for committee attendance.
Okay. Jacqueline Betchel,
Here.
Danielle Bethel,
Here.
Sharon Blassie, Satya Chandragiri,
I'm here.
Barbara Guillo,
Here.
Kathy Goss,
Here.
Lisa Harnish,
Here.
Levy Herrera Lopez,
Here.
Marty Hyen,
Here.
Paul Kylo,
Here.
Jesse Lippo Pion,
Present.
Oni Marchbanks,
Here.
Tyson Pruitt,
Here.
okay, and Adriana Miranda is absent tonight.
Thank you. I would like to just take the opportunity to give us a reminder that this meeting is being broadcasted on CC Media and also on YouTube with translation. Remember to use your microphones when you speak, and I would encourage you when you refer to items in the agenda packet or presentations to mention where to find the information that you are referencing to help your fellow committee members and also the interpreters and the audience at home. Just really helps out. Tonight we will be electing new leadership for the Budget Committee. I'm starting the meeting as the current chair with the help of Sharon Blassie as our vice chair. After the election of the new chair, in just a few minutes, I will be handing off the meeting to our new chair for them to lead from that point forward. I do want to take the opportunity to say that it's been a pleasure serving in this role, and I'm very proud that during this time, the Budget Committee has been able to work efficiently and collaboratively. We have great people in this committee, and I'm really looking forward to the election of leadership for this new cycle. We do have a slight agenda modification for tonight, and I believe it will be for item 6 in the discussion of the public hearings. So the slight modification is to have us discuss how public comment will be received for those public hearings. Since we will have new leadership and we have several new members, I think it makes sense for us as a group together to discuss how those sessions will be handled. So with that, I'd like to go on to the land acknowledgement. And for tonight, I would like to take the opportunity to read the land acknowledgement myself. I would like to, part of the reason for that is that I want to be able to take an active role in joining in this acknowledgement. I am an immigrant from Mexico with a diverse ancestry, part of which is indigenous to Mesoamerica. Historically, the peoples of Mesoamerica and what is now the U.S. and Oregon have been connected in many ways. And so in recognition of this connection and that I too am a guest in native lands, I'd like to offer the following words. Acknowledgement is critical in building the necessary trust to coexist in harmony with one another. Indigenous tribes and bands have lived on the lands of the Willamette Valley across Oregon and throughout the Americas since time immemorial. In this valley, the ancestry of the Kalapuya reaches the farthest back in time, reminding us that this plentiful place has been called by its original inhabitants long before the names of the snowy peaks and bountiful waters were re-identified. Land is not just a territory, it is part of who the people are. It is blood, past, present, and future, all intertwined. Today, we acknowledge that the people of this land are not relics of the past. They are here, and they are reciprocal contributors to the modern society we live in. We forward our respect to the first peoples of this land, the 9 federally recognized tribes of Oregon, and those who have ceded lands here. We reflect on the displacement, removal, and genocide of indigenous people that occurred throughout Oregon and beyond. In so doing, we truly honor the gravity of the past and endeavor to see that people may live in harmony and equity on this land for prosperity. May this acknowledgement carry resonance as a tool of peace over the land and waters we mutually rely upon. Please join us in uncovering such truths at any and all public events. And I would invite us to take just a brief moment of silence to reflect on the words. Please. Thank you. I would like to ask Vice Chair Cheryl Blassie to lead us on the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you. So if you're able to stand, please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So we're now gonna move to the first action item in the agenda, the election of the chair. But before that, I want to talk a little bit about how that process is going to go. And Superintendent Perry, or Sharon, feel free to jump in if I do miss anything. So as a reminder, it takes a vote of 8 to elect a chair or a vice chair. This is a majority of the committee, not a majority of those present. So even if we have only one up, still have to do it that way. Even though some people may feel the need to do a second on the nomination, nominations do not require a second. And what we will do, because we have members online and some in person, is that this time we will do the vote using a roll call vote. So I will call people's names and record the vote. And no other budget committee business can really take place until the chair and vice chair are elected. Is Superintendent Perry, is there any, or Sharon, is there anything that I missed on that one?
Nope, you did great.
So just give a little bit more detail on that. So if we only have one up, we're going to vote using aye or nay. But if we do have more than 2 or more nominees, what we're going to ask you to do is say the name of the nominee that you're voting for. And so we can track that. And I am going to need some help from Vice Chair Sharon and analysis to make sure that we keep track of how the votes are going and check my math. I'm usually not very good at math on my television, so it would be great to have some backup to make sure everything is kind of right. So unless there are any questions from committee members or anybody else, I think we can go ahead and get started with the nominations. And I cannot see everyone just so you know, so you have raising your hand.
Lisa has her hand raised.
Just go ahead.
Yes, I'd like to nominate Jessie Lippold-Pion, please.
Are there,
Marty has her hand raised.
Marty, go ahead.
Yes, I'd like to nominate Director Kylo because of his vast experience.
Thank you. Any other nominations?
I don't see any other hands raised.
Okay, so, really, the only person who's not here today is Adriana, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so, with that, so we'll start with the vote, and since we do have two candidates.
Chair.
nominees. Go ahead.
I think there's a question.
There's a question. Is there a way we can just hear at least a line of why we nominated this candidate so we can make an informed decision when it comes to voting, or is that procedurally not allowed?
That would be fine with me if the people who made the nomination would like to do that, guys. They can go ahead and do that at this time.
Sure. Well, I nominated Jesse because he has a real solid understanding of the district and what the district needs and the budget process, and I think he'd be a great chair.
Thank you.
Yes, and I nominated Director Kylo because he's the longest-standing member of the board. He has been board chair before. I'm not sure if he served in leadership on the budget committee, but he has been board chair. He knows this district, I think, better than anybody else on the board. I certainly believe he knows it better than I do. And I know that he will allow everybody to have their voice heard when they have questions and need more information.
Thank you. So, one must under no other nominees, correct?
I don't see any other hands raised.
Okay, so with that, so since we do have, just to give us all a reminder, so if there are, since we have two nominees, so what we'll be doing is taking a roll call. So I'll be asking each committee member to state the name of the nominee that they're voting for. And then I'm going to keep track of that. And then once we go through that, I'll be sharing the tally and also who voted for each candidate. So with that, we will begin. I'm moving to my list. Okay, so we will start first with Jacqueline.
That work?
I don't know if you have to press it.
You don't.
Paul Kylo.
Thank you. Danielle.
Paul Kylo.
Thank you. Satya.
Director Kylo.
Barbara.
Jesse? I don't know how to pronounce the last name, sorry.
It's Peon.
Peony.
Thank you.
Thank you. Kathy.
Tom Kylo.
Thank you. Lisa.
Director Lippel-Pion, please.
Thank you. Marty.
Director Kylo.
Thank you. Paul.
Jesse.
Thank you. Jesse.
Are you going to vote for Paul, Jesse? He voted for you.
I'm going to vote for Jesse. Paul Peon.
Thank you. Oni.
Paul Kylo.
Thank you. Tyson.
Paul Kylo.
Thank you. Vice Chair Jerome.
Jesse Lippold-Pion.
Thank you. And I'll go, so Chair, is vote for Jesse. So, and so I'll allow a couple of seconds to do the count. And so this is where I need a backup to make sure that my count is correct. By my count, I have 6 votes in favor of Jesse Lipopion, and that the Barbara, Lisa, Paul, Jesse, Vice Chair Sharon, Lassie, and myself as chair. There are, on my count, there are 7 votes in favor of Paul. That being Jacqueline, Danielle, Satya, Kathy, Marty, Oni, and Tyson. Does everybody else get a different count?
That's the same count I have.
Thank you. So, our policy says we have to have 8 votes. So, well, if I remember correctly, and means the statute, if I'm messing stuff up, what we will be doing is possession. So if there are 2 nominees and it's a tie, then what we are going to be doing now is a second round of voting. So our goal is to make sure that the chair has 8 votes. Just to remind everybody, we cannot move forward with our agenda until we have the chair and vice chair elected. So if it takes multiple rounds, we will have to just keep going until this happens, until we get that result. So are there any questions about this procedure? Or did I miss anything about staff? Okay, so hearing none, so we will move to do a second round of voting. So we will go in the same order, and I will be again asking you what your preference is. So we will start again with Jacqueline.
Paul Kylo.
Thank you. Danielle.
Kylo.
Thank you. Satya.
Paul Kylo, please.
Thank you. Barbara.
Jesse Peony.
Thank you. Kathy.
Paul Kylo.
Thank you. Lisa.
Jesse Lipopion.
Thank you. Marty.
Director Kylo.
Thank you. Paul.
Paul Kylo.
Thank you. Jesse.
Jesse Lipopion.
Thank you. Oni.
Kylo.
Thank you. Tyson.
Kylo.
Thank you. Vice Chair Sharon.
Jesse?
Thank you. Chair Lomera for Jesse.
Okay. So,
That. Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Levy. So yeah, so that's now 8 votes for Director Kylo.
Thank you. Yeah, that's what I also have. So again, just to recap, that will be Jacqueline, Danielle, Satya, Kathy, Marty, Paul, Oni, and Tyson. That makes 8 votes for for Paul Kylo as chair. And with that, I think you also participating in this. I will hand off the meeting at this point, unless I'm missing anything on the procedure.
No, I think you're ready to hand off, and we've got a
Yeah,
roll sheet up there at
okay,
the
that's what I
dais.
was looking for.
Yeah, it's at the dais. So you get to move locations.
Derek, Chair Kylo / Levy, can I offer thank you to our previous budget chair, Levy. Thank you very much for doing this. You did an amazing job in the last 2 meetings. So I just wanted to say, while our new chair is getting situated, I want to take this moment to say thank you. It was, I appreciate.
The next order of business, thank you. Thank you. The next order of business would be the election of the vice chair. Do we have any nominations for vice chair? Director Chandra Gary.
Chair Kylo, I would like to nominate Mrs. Wilma Oni Marchbanks as the candidate for vice chair. And the reason I would like to nominate Mrs. Marchbanks is I've seen extraordinary leadership and initiative she has taken in personally working on developing a mentorship program for children from Black communities using university level students and Harvard Medical School, and I've seen that level of initiative. She's got a lot of passion and is also passionate about increasing the academic performance and closing the gap. And yet, she is an amazing leader in our community, and she's a nonprofit on equity. So I really think this would be a very important leader as a great role model for our students. So I would like to nominate.
Okay, thank you. Any other nominations? Any other nominations for vice chair? I can't see Danielle. And I can't see Oni. And I can't see Tyson. Do you, any of you four have nominations?
I do not, and I apologize, my internet is slow, so if I turn on the video, I get kicked out.
Okay. Tyson?
Nope.
Okay. All right, Levy?
Nope.
Okay. Oni? Just disappeared.
No, I do not, sorry about that.
Okay. So, seeing no more nominations, we can go through the balloting. It'll be basically yes or no, since it's one candidate. So, supporting Oni Marchbanks, Jacqueline,
Yes.
Danielle,
Yes.
Sharon? Yes. Satya?
Yes?
Barbara?
Yes.
Kathy?
Yes.
Okay. Lisa?
Yes.
Levy?
Yes.
Marty?
Yes.
I vote yes. Jesse?
Yes.
Oni? I read your lips, but I didn't hear you.
Yes.
Okay. Adriana's not here. And Tyson?
Yes.
Okay. Then I would proclaim that Oni is our new vice chair. So. Okay. And the next item of business, moving on, would be the superintendent's budget message. So Superintendent Perry.
All right, good evening, everyone. I'm going to do a quick technology check. Yep, it's not even a huge delay. All right, good evening, Chair Kylo, Vice Chair Marchbanks, and members of the Budget Committee. Also, special thanks to both Levy and Sharon for your leadership over the past 2 years as we navigated some tricky times last time. I think the Budget Committee meeting last time was one of our almost first meetings virtually, so here we are. Thank you for your continued service to our community, our students, and I hope that for the Budget Committee members, you had a chance to review some of our reports in the board meetings last week. If you haven't, especially for new Budget Committee members, please know we're happy to walk you through anything, get you up to speed on things you have questions about, and we'll take this time in the next couple weeks to help you. For the audience, the proposed budget is located on the website. You'll want to go to the board and budget page on the website to find it. The slides tonight are just on the screen, but we'll make those available on the website at a later point. With that, I'm hoping that I can kind of set the context for where we are with what we know about revenue, how we're managing our equity strategies, and know that in one meeting and one budget message, I won't be able to get you everything in one night. So we'll just take it one step at a time. So first of all, I think it's always important for us to center who we are and who our students are, which are our most important customers. And so we have over 40,000 students. About 44% of our students are Hispanic, 43% are white, with the other percentages making up different racial and ethnic groups within our community. We had about 6,500 students this past year and still enrolled in our EDGE Online Academy. That was a new program for this year. We're seeing our numbers and what they might be for next year, but I think that's really important for us to know. And then really also important is we have about 8,200 students that are enrolled in a career technical education course at some point during high school in 2019-20. The next part of our by the numbers shows the, I'm just got to wait and see how long the delay is in between slides, shows both our graduation rates on a steady incline, our dropout rate last year, a deep decline, and then it talks a little bit about who our students are. One of the things I work hard for in a presentation is to center our students first in my language. So when I talk about our students, I will talk about our students in person first language. So our students who are learning English rather than English language learner students, I always try to center our students first. So we have about 17% of our students who are learning English. We have 88 rich and diverse languages in our community that are spoken by our students and their families. 29% of our students speak a language other than English at home, and about 17% of our students are students with disabilities. And at the same time, we have about 2,300 students who are identified as talented and gifted. The next slide just really gives you a quick snapshot of our demographics.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Do we need to slow down to let the technology catch up for the slides back here?
Oh, that one isn't working.
Yes.
So where are you, that side of the room, are you able to see? Not very well. Thank you, I couldn't see it was behind me, I
know.
appreciate that.
But I saw Bob starting to sweat, so.
Yeah. It was that great technology report in the boardroom last time.
I wasn't gonna bring that up.
I know, it really was a good report. For those online, we're managing the Zoom and 2 other screens in our room. So we're going. Is there a Jeopardy song we could hum?
Yeah.
No. Yeah. No, that one. Oh, goodness.
People online still see that anyway. So, well, and there's a board right there.
And I do wonder if we could push that back.
Well, except they can't see it.
And you do have a copy of the PowerPoint in your packets, if that's helpful. And if we just scoot,
There's a board right next to it.
yeah. And if we scooted
Oh,
the,
I see. Okay.
So there's 2 boards, everybody can see.
Yeah.
Yeah, they can see over there.
Do you guys feel good if we keep going? You found the slides? Okay, awesome.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, so I'm going to keep us moving. On the demographic side, really important to note is that our staff in the district does not mirror our student demographics, and that's one of the things we keep striving for in our work. Now the slide thing isn't, the clicker isn't working. You want me to take it up here? Okay. This is going to be the longest budget message ever. I'm going to slow it down. All right. This is a copy of our strategic plan. Our strategic plan was developed with key strategies that we would use and commit to over time, so you don't see a huge shift in the strategic plan. One of the really important components of the strategic plan is a centering of equity. And you see equity language in multiple of our strategies. So we'll develop the knowledge, will, and skill of our leaders to interrupt systems of oppression. And when I talk leaders to the district, I talk about all of us as leaders, all of the Salem-Keizer employees. And then also inclusive culture and climate is another place we see equity clearly in the strategic plan. Lots we heard from parents and families through our student investment account listening sessions in previous year, and we hear this every day, that the most important thing is that our students and their families want to feel included in school. And we continue to monitor that through metrics like sense of belonging. Center in this, though, is equitable student outcomes. We purposefully place social emotional skills and behavioral skills in our strategic plan because we know that those are essential to academic learning. So we want our students not only to achieve academically, but to have the behavior and social emotional skills to thrive. Both of those really important, and the social emotional supports for our students is what we hear over and over again in our, from our students and from our families, and has even been exacerbated in the pandemic. I put some slides in my PowerPoint tonight about career technical education, just as an example of one of our equity-based strategies. So career and technical education is a central strategy that is demonstrating equitable outcomes for our students, not just in our Career Technical Education Center, which has about 1,000 students who remain home residents of their home high school, but in the 48 state-approved CTE courses across all of our schools, 16 of which offer industry certification. And our career technical education programs are pathways to colleges and universities, pathways to technical school, pathways to community college, and pathways to work. This particular slide of demographics is something we've really worked hard is to get access. One of the real important equity components is access. So what you see in our access data right here is that our career technical education students who participate in CTE mirror our student demographics. In the past couple years, we've raised our, by about 400 students, our students with disabilities who access career technical education, and also our English language learners in high school. That number is growing for accessing career technical education. You know that our students learning English in high school are at one of the greatest risks as a group of students to graduate on time in 4 years. So the next slide just shows you how our participation in CTE has increased over time and how we are maintaining that greater than 90% four-year graduation rate for kids that are CTE concentrators. A CTE concentrator has to participate in a state-approved CTE course. A couple courses has to be linked to college credit. And if they are a concentrator, they graduate at 95% in 4 years. For students that just take one CTE course in high school, the graduation rate is over 90. So just one set of data. Next, I want to show you a little bit about our enrollment I think it would be no surprise that in the midst of a pandemic and moving very quickly to comprehensive distance learning, we did see a drop in our enrollment. We've also seen this drop over time. So our enrollment has been dropping as our kids coming into kindergarten have been reduced, but especially in the pandemic, our kindergarten students were down quite a bit. So you'll see that our numbers are dropping in elementary, middle school is just staying steady, and then high school is we're seeing that little bit of a increase. One of the things we did when we adopted the budget last year, for those of you who were on the budget committee, you remember the uncertainty of budget times. And so we made some best guesses. And what we would say is we had plenty of FTE for the numbers of students, and then we had fewer students show up. So FTE, full-time equivalency, would be a teacher. And we strategically did not reduce our FTE during the year because we knew that even though in places class sizes were small, that our kids needed the support in this time. So we left that amount of FTE that we hired, and it didn't matter that the kids didn't show up. And that's important because you'll see some adjustments later in the budget process. The next thing you'll notice, and we've seen this trend for a couple years now, that the students that are showing up who qualify for English language services. That doesn't mean they might not speak a different language in their home, because remember we have 88 languages spoken by kids and families, but these are the students that qualify for English language services. And you'll see that our elementary numbers have been dropping for that qualification, and then our middle and high school, there's a bubble kind of going through the system. So our secondary is up as our elementary numbers are down. And you started to see this trend a number of years ago. If you look back to 15, 16, I think that was my second year in the district, we were at over 6,000 students qualifying for English language services in the elementary level. But what you'll see in the budget is we've made some strategic choices to not reduce. Generally, as you have a drop in enrollment, you might think about reducing the amount of staff to support that. But we made some strategic decisions along the way in this budget not to reduce that. We know that our students learning English will need as much support as ever when they come back full-time in the fall, and we chose strategically to leave that in the budget. And I'll point those things out to you as we go. So the next part, I'm going to shift gear and start getting into the numbers. So I'm going to start with the big picture, the total proposed budget. The total proposed budget for 21-22 is $1,491,370,253.
Superintendent Perry?
Yes.
You're moving into the proposed budget now? I was
Yes.
wondering if people had questions about your message. If we want to take those now, or if you want to take them all at the end.
I think we want to take them all at the end.
That's fine.
Thank you.
I'm asking you.
Yep, thanks.
You're on.
Yep. This is across all funds. The primary fund that you'll spend the most time on is the general fund. And the primary fund is detailed in this proposed budget, and it's given to you in fairly great detail. The local and state revenue in the fund sustains the daily operation of the district. You'll hear it called the state school fund as a revenue source. It funds teaching and learning, operations, custodians, counselors, technology, stuff and things. If you walked into a school or a department, the majority of the people that you would see are funded through the Gen Fund. So that's the biggest fund in our district. And the general operating fund accounts for almost $600 million in this proposed budget. We also have a number of funds that sit outside the general fund. The over $432 million in the capital projects fund is where you find the 2018 bond revenue and their expenditures. The debt service fund pays the debt for those bonds through revenue generated through property taxes. In the grants fund, you'll see this is a bit of under special revenues fund. That's where we put the state and federal grants such as IDEA, Title 1, 2, 3, C, SIA, High School Success that used to be Measure 98, and what we're now calling ESSER, which is some federal dollars coming into schools for emergency relief. Also included in the special revenue fund is the food services fund and the asset replacement. The budget you'll see is developed following local budget law, and the accounts are aligned to the accounting manual from Oregon Department of Education. If I were in charge of the world, there would be things I would reorder, like why are speech and language pathologists before counselors in the budget? But just know that we are following local budget law and the accounting codes given to us by Oregon Department of Education. And it's a highly regulated audit procedure and CAFR procedure when we close out the books. So next I've gone big picture, the 1.4 billion down to general fund. So we're just going to talk general fund right now. First of all, the proposed budget is based on $9.4 billion in the state school fund. So that is what we are hopeful our legislature will give to us in state school fund dollars. The current state school fund under consideration in the legislature is at $9.1 billion, but the current service level for Salem-Keizer to maintain current programming is 9.8. So I threw out a lot of numbers there. Legislature at 9.1, we budgeted at 9.4. So the budget you see before you is projecting revenue greater than what we know the state will give us at this time. The revenue in the biennium is split between 49% and 51%. That's how we carry the costs forward and don't need to do cuts in the second year. And it's really an important way to allocate our revenue to sustain programs. Keep in mind, for those of you that have been with me multiple years now, the legislature is still in session. The state school fund has not been finalized, but it's important to note that the proposed budget 9.4, as we proposed it, forces us to dip into reserves and really isn't sustainable over time if we don't get more in the state school fund revenue or we don't backfill with some of the emergency dollars from the feds. The next slide gives you just sort of a snapshot of how we spend our dollars. I think it's important to know that the best things for our students are amazing adults, teachers, classified, custodians, amazing adults that work with kids, and those amazing adults make up quite a big percentage of our total Gen Fund budget. So reductions, as they happen, often happen to people because so much of our budget is made up of people. I'm not proposing a reduction of people tonight, but just as context for you. Our assumptions on the next slide are as follows, and I will show you where these are in our budget book so you can just keep referring back to them. That's why you have sticky notes and highlighters, and I'll just take you through all that. So state school fund at $9.4 billion. Collective bargaining, we are in bargaining or soon to be bargaining with both of our associations. We've not finalized bargaining, so there's no reflection of that in this budget. But you'll notice we're coming in with a little higher contingency, $36.5 million or 6.18%. The beginning fund balance, and this is where you'll see where we'll have some reserves that help us have this sort of a budget right now, is projected at $70 million. And our extended ADMW, which is average daily membership weighted, we get a second weight for students that's identified with a disability. That's the weighted number. We're projecting that to be down just slightly. And that's the ADMW number is how we are funded through that state school fund grant. So the next slides, I'm just going to walk you through what's different. There's lots of detail for those of you that are new about what we do, but in the budget message presentation, I try to walk through what's different than the adopted budget. So this year we have some major technical adjustments. These were things that we had to add as people after we adopted the budget last year, and we've rolled them up for next year. So they're in this budget, and I'll show you where they are in our FTE pages. So we have the EDGE program, so 10 FTE classified. That's our office support, community school outreach coordinator, data specialist for EDGE, 2 principals. We have a licensed program assistant, associate for the curriculum office, some district instructional mentor support that also helps in EDGE, a communications project manager, an operations supervisor, 3 classified technology employees. Last week, Director Silva shared about the numbers of help desk tickets. Well, we had added some classified support, and then a security manager. The next slide gives you some of the things that are additions in the budget. So we haven't hired these positions yet. Those are the additions. One key feature of this budget proposal is a middle school alternative education program. I think those of you that have been around for a while have known the need that at the middle school level, we hear from families and students time and time again that they need something different. And a middle school alt ed program has been high on our mind for a number of years. The current projection for next year is trying to get about 50 to 70 students enrolled with a program capacity of 100 for the first year. And it's been funded in a variety of ways. So we have an FTE license for a behavior specialist, classified special program instructional assistants, a guidance counselor, school office specialist, and then we've realigned. So we've moved some positions out of middle school into alt ed because it's a different function within the budget. And then we've realigned an alt ed administrative position as well. And I put it all together in one package for you so you could see how we're staffing and thinking about that middle school program. One of the things I'm anxious to share is some of our alt ed redesign work that we've done, and I'll be sharing that in the coming months with the school board. We're excited to have a way to more proactively meet students where they are, and between alt ed and also our online academy, I think it gives us options that we maybe haven't always had. So the next set of additions, the next one is a kind of a big addition. We've added 12.8 FT and licensed staff to increase our speech language pathologists. This allows us to have one SLP at each elementary school rather than splitting them between the schools. They'll be embedded in the school MTSS teams, allowing them to support interventions related to language and communication, reduces travel time, which increases student contact time, and reduces an itinerant staff never feeling as they have a school home. And the more we know that our educators are embedded in a school home, the more they wrap around as a team in being committed to student success. The other addition, and you've seen this the last couple years, is 6.37 FTE for custodians and 2 more FTE for maintenance workers. Our bond projects have increased square footage across the district. So last year you saw this almost identical ad. This year you'll see another one. Remember, we have South and McKay coming online with more square footage this year as just 2 really big examples of where there's more square footage, but there's also square footage across elementary and middle as well through those bond projects. Finally, we have some realignment and reductions. So when I say reductions, it's reductions in positions. This isn't triggering any sort of a layoff of people because we have lots of openings and vacancies every year, but this is just shifting the FTE count to match our enrollment. So 11 FTE licensed staff are moving from elementary instruction to high school instruction because of the enrollment shifts. 10 FTE licensed staff in elementary instruction reduced because of declining enrollment at the elementary. Remember, in COVID, we didn't reduce any. As we're thinking about ahead to 5 days a week of instruction, we are trying to right-size the staffing model. And then also 5 FTE licensed staff in middle school instruction is also reduced because of declining enrollment at the middle school. And then finally, the other big changes, there's a number of transfers we take out of the general fund and put into some of the special revenue funds. So we have an additional transfer out of $200,000 for food services for meal fund write-offs, because that's a requirement now if kids get lots of charges that we pay for those. $500,000 for preventative and deferred maintenance for turf field replacement. We have an additional turf field that we need to replace this summer on a pretty important safety schedule for our turf fields. And then we have $500,000 additional to asset replacement for white fleet replacement for aging vehicles. And you saw that last week in one of those infrastructure reports. Keep in mind that part of the investment in stuff and things and keeping our equipment updated helps us have a sustainable budget for the future, because there isn't the same escalation of costs. And then finally, the transportation package and bus purchases approved by the board in April of 2020 are included in the Gen Fund, including when I walk you through where the beginning fund balance is, you will see greater than the 70 million I cited earlier, because there's 32 million there in the beginning fund balance that's restricted for the transportation facility, and it has to remain in the Gen Fund. So you have to see it in there as revenue. So I'm going to move us to substantial grants now. These are grants that are funded outside the Gen Fund, and they come in multiple forms. And I'm going to kind of just walk you through what each of those are. I won't get into detail, too much detail on strategies tonight, because next week at our board meeting, we're going to share the full student investment account strategies and backup with budget. We do that in a public meeting with the board. We're also going to share high school success strategies. And then on the 18th, when we come back, we'll give you some of our initial thinking around the ESSER funds as well. The proposed budget fully takes care of the revenue for these grants, and we have the revenue appropriated in the appropriate categories. So there isn't any risk in approving the budget when we get there, even though we're still making plans as we go. So the first one is most of these are funded under Grant 240, and that's our high school success. You can hear it called Measure 98, our title grants, IDEA, Student Success Act, and the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund. That's the last time I'm going to say, I'll say it one more time. Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund, ESSER. It was CARES dollars that came to us. This is the federal government emergency funds for schools. So the first one is the SIA, and it is approximated to come in about $30 million, a little under that. That's almost full funding of SIA projected into next year. We have a student investment account advisory that monitors and helps prioritize the spending. The strategies in the SIA plan for 2021 will continue in 21-22 because in pandemic, some of them we've just barely started. So I was visiting with Director Lipple-Pion before, and I talked to him about we've hired a dual language coordinator because one of our strategies was around dual language expansion. So that will really be one of the things we begin to launch next year. Would have loved to have done it this year, but too many things on the plate for that. And then we'll present that on May 11th in the boardroom, so you can see that full range of strategies. And why that's all important is because while the Gen Fund takes our base funding and does a lot of daily operations, what we do with these grant funds is help fund our equity strategies and to really prioritize equitable outcomes within those. So for some of them, it's really hard to point to one place in the budget book to say, this is our equity strategy, and here is exactly how it's funded, because it's funded some in the Gen Fund, some in SIA, in a couple cases, it's also funded in Measure 98 or title programs. So we'll do our best to try to make sense of that for you. The next fund is Emergence, the ESSER, I'm not going to say that again. This is going to be approximately $150 million over the next 3 years. So the trick is going to be to prioritize that in a way. First and foremost is kids back in school 5 days a week. Has to be, if something happens, it takes more FTE, the ESSER funds will be there to give us more FTE for 5 days a week instruction. If we need more sanitation and cleaning supplies, and it's not in the Gen Fund, ESSER is there to do this. There's also a portion of the fund that is set for the unfinished learning, academic acceleration, credit recovery, about 20% of that fund. And but the trick is, it's over 3 years, so it's not 150 next year, and you have to figure out how do you watch that escalation in order to not overspend. And what you also don't want to do is hire a bunch of people that in 2.5 years we lay off. So that's our planning strategy right now. The other thing that you can do with the ESSER is you can, if you have a Gen Fund, if we have a revenue problem in the Gen Fund, you can do some backfilling for financial stability for the future. Because it would be crazy making to lay off positions in the Gen Fund and add positions in ESSER. So we're really trying to model for the next, what's our next 2, 3, 4, 5 years look like, and then how do we think about those funds over time. So that one's taking us a little longer, and even the numbers and allowances we're just now getting. So we are doing, looking at learning acceleration, social, emotional, and behavioral health supports, response to COVID-19, safety protocols, 5 days a week, instructional model. Our district health authority, we have a lead nurse and a team of additional nurses and LPNs that are managing our COVID response. Those will be in the ESSER funds. The question is, do you need a district health authority post-COVID? We don't know. It'll allow us to spend a little time to make that decision as we get through the next school year. And we'll know a lot more once we get kids back to 5 days. The other thing we can use is for operation and management of large grants. When you have a $150 million grant project over 3 years, combined with SIA, combined with Measure 98, you really need a grant manager for that as well. Capital improvements such as ventilation, and then support to the Gen Fund if the state school fund is not fully funded. We'll know more about the state school fund, I'm just sure of it, by the end of June. I'm not sure of it that we'll know more about the state school fund before I ask you to approve the budget. Be awesome if they did, but the history's been, it usually isn't. So they're also, it's a tricky year at the legislature as well. So next I'm going to switch strategy, switch topics, and just really center us in equity. And this will be one piece of the presentation, but again, you'll get more next week. You'll get more on the 18th. Our goal is to think about how we can provide you a matrix system to say, here's our social emotional supports, and here's like a check mark, here's where they're funded, here's where the funds are. So you can see at a glance how we fund our equity strategies. And I'm going to give you some big numbers because I think the numbers are important. So first of all, equity includes expanded access to learning, expanded supports for all students, authentic engagement with our community, targeted supports for specific students, and continual staff training and learning. And a key equity consideration is always access. So access to grade level content, our students with disabilities included in grade level content in their classroom, access to rigorous coursework. And some of those things cost money, and others are just what we need to do. We need to rethink how we do some education for our kids. So one key access barrier we tackled this year, you can see the progress we've made on career technical education enrollment. One key barrier we tackled this year is our embedded honors program. These programs were barriers to access and served as a gatekeeper for our students. Students, their path was determined before they started high school. And you don't see this in the proposed budget, but the key work we tackled as part of our dismantling systems of oppression work. I had the opportunity to hear from a student who is in an embedded honors program this past week, and at some point I'll maybe share her email with you if you're interested. But she talked about it in terms of she really thought it was kind of a bad idea and wondered what we were thinking. And then as she has sat in her honors class, this is unsolicited from the superintendent, in her honors English class, or English class that has embedded honors, what she learned is that in her class, that used to be she was the only student of color, she now had other students of color. And she felt more at home. And her friends saw themselves in the honors work. And she felt more empowered because she had kids that she knew that looked like them to speak up and talk. She said it better than any amount of research could tell you. And she said kids were trying honors that never saw themselves as honors students before. That sort of a program doesn't cost a lot of money. It causes a change of thinking and really hard critical work by our educators to rethink how they deliver instruction. Another access point is to continue to engage our students and families as we work to shift our district and implement strategies that improve instruction, social emotional outcomes, sense of belonging in our schools. Some examples are our SIA Advisory Committee. It doesn't cost money. It's not required by law, but it's a committee of student, staff, community leaders that represent our kids that talk about the strategies and funding the SIA plan. Came from a task force that had community representation, listening sessions where we went out in our community, identified strategies, now to an advisory committee. Doesn't cost money, not required by law, but the inclusivity of bringing people to the table to help us with decisions is really has powerful outcomes. One of the things that the committee really pushed on this year was more spending in SIA for social emotional. It was at about 17% of the SIA. This year it's at, I think, 23 to 25%. So another key examples are student equity committees, both at the district level and the high school, and in our high schools. That's where I found the student who wanted to talk about embedded honors. Wasn't on my topic, but she wanted to. And again, it just isn't a money thing in our budget, it's how we do business. One of the key questions I know all of you will have on your mind, I know this is on the mind of the community, but while the SR contracts were not renewed, I've left that contracted amount in the budget because we have these other places to fund some of the social emotional learning supports, or a lot of the social emotional learning supports for our kids. And one of the things we need to do is we're still spending time really understanding, without an SRO contract, what are the gaps and what's that new relationship with law enforcement look like. So really important to us is to slow down and get it right in a transition plan versus not having the ability to make good decisions. So we've left that in there. We do know that we need a level of physical safety and security, especially with the increased square footage. Does that mean more campus security? How does law enforcement interact with our 5 preventative systems? We have a research-based threat assessment system, fire setting system, sexual incident response system, suicide risk assessment system. Each of those systems, and on top of that, child abuse investigations, all require some sort of an interface with law enforcement. So we're just trying to hold there so we can really figure out what that means and make the best decisions. So for the current budget cycle, just left the resources there as we work really hard to be sure we get it right. Important to the physical safety of our kids is getting this part of it right. And we have the resources to fund the social emotional learning supports that our kids, families, and community have been asking for. And I'll show you a couple examples of that, because high on the list was social workers, and I'll show you how we've kind of rearranged to make sure we have some dedicated social worker time in our high schools. So I'm just going to do rapid fire equity strategies. And I'm not going to point to them in the budget book. I'm just going to give you the examples. Sometimes I'll tell you where they're funded, sometimes they're not. So lower student to staff ratios at title school, Gen Fund. Investment in diversity pathways program to hire and retain diverse staff, Gen Fund. Middle school alt ed program, Gen Fund, which I think there's also a little SIA there. Culturally responsive social studies and language arts programs or curriculum. A little bit in Gen Fund, the people to help choose, and then SIA. Last year we spent over $800,000 on culturally responsive language arts curriculum at our secondary schools. And then in addition, we'll have the ESSER funds. And remember, on May 18th, our goal is to provide you a matrix to kind of map out how these large strategies work. We've added additional social workers. Our plan is to have one licensed clinical social worker at each high school. As we looked at duties of SROs, we are trying to narrow the need and backfill with a resource. So the resource around clinical social workers at each high school going to be really important. Also Title I middle schools. As we look at the model, if we need to add a few more, we can add them in ESSER. We have a mental health partnerships at every school. Some of that's funded in SIA, some of it's private partnerships that don't cost us anything, but we have one in every single school. And then we strategically added some counselors to reduce high caseloads at a couple secondary schools. So we had a couple schools that were high above the average on that. We've added community engagement specialists. Those are the positions that were funded out of Cynthia Richardson, Director Richardson's office. I call them the Dwight and Kenny, go out, meet with our kids, look like our kids, but we've got many, many more of those, and they're funded a little bit in Gen Fund, SIA, Measure 98. So we braided and blended 3 funding sources because we know that's a critical equity strategy. And as we don't have enough educators and staff in our system that look like our kids, these community engagement specialists and cultural navigators look like our kids, belong to the cultures of our kids, and our kids really respond well to them. So additional translators, a community engagement specialist, and we've been working on a student cafe model. Doesn't cost us anything, but a way for our equity teams and our trained leaders to go out and get feedback directly from kids. With the addition of one community engagement specialist whose position is in the comms office out of SIA, we've seen that sort of engagement with our kids and the way to get two-way feedback with our kids really take off. Costs a little bit, yields tons of information about how our kids show up. In fact, tomorrow, our first student cafe, we've got about 2 minutes that we're going to share to the entire staff in the district tomorrow from the voices of students. All right, for students who qualify for special education, additional school psychologists, additions are funded in SIA, but we have 10 in the Gen Fund too. Additional supports for special education, some classified employees, additional staffing. The speech and language pathologist addition, straight Gen Fund, some additional special education teachers, and continuing funding of Goal Book, which is a really curriculum for our students in our developmental disabilities classrooms. You'll see the dual language redesign, strategic maintenance of resources for elementary students learning English. I talked about that earlier. You don't see a reduction. Additional license supports for students learning English, Gen Fund, plus we have a good number of FTE in that SIA fund as well. Newcomers programming at secondary schools, and language and literacy focus at our targeted elementary schools. And the language and literacy focus, the language focus is really helping, goal is to help and elevate our students learning English. And that's SIA. We also, really important is our staff training and awareness. Again, professional development, bias training, culturally responsive school leadership, all critical if we're going to move the mark. Things like culturally responsive school leadership helps us as we're navigating dismantling of oppressive programs like the embedded honors English. The culturally responsive school leadership really helps us learn about the epistemology of our cultures and communities in order to show up better as educators for our kids. So we've got anti-bias training, restorative practices training. We've launched an equity audit. We'll get recommendations in June, early July. We've started race-based affinity groups, and we've also have equity coaching and consultation. All critical if we're going to move our equity strategies forward. So just from dollars, the equity examples around from the SIA. So if you look at just dollars, because I think that helps provide context, 1.2 million in cultural and community resource specialists, 1.3 million in additional social workers, 1.4 million additional school counselors, 500,000 culturally specific curriculum. That's not all the numbers, just a few of them, because I wanted you to understand the importance and the magnitude of our commitment and investment. Because when you have dollars to invest, how you invest them in these additional grant funds really matters. So as we prepare for another budget approval and adoption, I think it's important to reflect both on what we've accomplished in the past year. Man, it's been a year. Who thought we'd still be here? The entire Salem-Keizer family has led through a global pandemic. I'm not using the word unprecedented, because now it's just normal, which includes our care and connection for our students and their families. I'm really proud of us because we cared first and then supported the academic needs as we gained skill in new technology platforms, Zoom, and as our kids did as well. We stood up an online academy. We originally thought it was going to be about 1,000 kids. 7,000 students showed up for full online learning this year, which caused a massive shift in staffing in August last year. We provided millions of meals. We had bus routes where we took meals out to, and then we shifted to hybrid learning. I'm super proud that we are the first large district in the state that got kids back to hybrid learning first, and the amount of kids we brought into our schools in limited in-person instruction was greater in numbers than any district in the state. At times, we had thousands of kids in our schools, and people are saying school's not in session. Well, we had thousands of kids in our schools in limited in-person instruction. I also am really proud of our association partners who have worked diligently to be by our side, but also to ensure protections were in place for their employees. Really important role for our association, and I'm just really proud of the way they showed up for us. Our counselors and social workers continued to provide additional supports for our students, and our school and department leaders pivoted again and again and again. Felt like for a while every day. And on top of it, we led through wildfires and an ice storm. So to say the organization is fatigued would be an understatement of the year, but we've really, as a family, showed up and been really resilient and determined on behalf of our students, and for that I'm really proud. We were joking that, oh my gosh, July, they're going to give us the guidance for next year in July. We're not going to do that, and I was kind of being a little sassy, like, that's too late, we can't do that. And Dr. Sproles looked at me and said, well, Christy, we did it 3 times last summer. What are you talking about? We can do that. So, but we do have a certain level of fatigue. And as we plan for next year, we face lots of uncertainty. The proposed budget I'm sharing with you tonight gives us the flexibility and the resources to respond to whatever comes at us. So we don't know what the restrictions will be. We think there'll be 3 feet and face coverings is one important thing. We don't know what's going to happen with buses and lunchrooms and all of that, but we're really determined and committed that we're going to get kids back 5 days a week. We're going to start, we can do this, and we're hoping that the guidelines won't become too big of obstacles to get to that. We'll also have our online academy with Edge. Right now, we're projecting for about 2,300 kids. That's our staffing model and our enrollment model. because we know that we'll have kids and families that choose online because their kids perform better in an online environment, or choose online for whatever family reason related to the pandemic. So we want to be there, and we believe EDGE will be that innovative practice that lasts beyond COVID. We have an unsettled state school fund budget. Remember, they're at 9.1. We're proposing at 9.4. I'm hoping that I'm not overly optimistic. Christie's crystal ball is pretty good after 17 years, but I don't even know how to call that one, this year. And we have a robust summer school program that will serve thousands of our students. We have a summer school grant. We have plenty of revenue placed in the special revenue funds, the grant funds, to account for that. And we're really excited to offer enrichment, credit renewal, career technical education, summer camps, children's theater. We're really excited to be able to offer all of that. But when you layer on the really big operational complexities, I will tell you it will further fatigue the organization in a summer that probably there were people who could really just have used a little bit of break. But they've shown back up, especially around transportation, to say, how can we do this? How can we make that work? Because an important equity consideration for summer school is transportation. It doesn't do any good for our kids who need it the most if we don't have a summer school program that can offer transportation. So our transportation department is hard at work, as being very fatigued, trying to make that happen on behalf of kids. With that also, there's some wraparound supports for childcare that are coming through some state grants. And again, that's just another logistical management thing that we're working through. But if we have a working parent who can't get their student to a summer camp and can't get off work to pick them up, an important equity consideration is childcare. So we're committed and determined to that, because on behalf of our kids, we know what they need this summer is to see us and to have fun and to play and to have credit renewal and hands-on opportunity. So I continue to remain really proud to serve as your superintendent and present this proposed budget to you. I think it provides the best allocation for our students, giving the existing and projected resources, and allows us the flexibility if things change, which we know they will, once the budget is approved and adopted. This proposed budget, when both general fund and grant funds are combined, provides strategy and funding for the priorities we've heard time and time again from our students and families: social emotional supports, alternative ed at the middle school, transportation to get to things. And it really centers that commitment to social emotional help, culturally responsive pedagogy, restorative practice, and more community resource specialists, CSOCs, that look like our kids and know how they show up in our schools.
Okay, thank you, Superintendent Perry.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have budget books to pass out
I do.
or distribute? So why don't we take a 5-minute break to process all of the information you just gave us, so people can formulate their questions, and then we can begin again in 5 minutes after the budget books have been distributed.
That'd be great.
And then we could turn it over to Mr. Wolf to do his thing after the questions. Okay? For 5 minutes, we'll start again at 7:33. That's what you would have done. restart. People with questions, we will go through the list alphabetically since I can't see everyone. If you don't have any pressing questions for the superintendent about the budget message or her quick overview, pass is a very good answer. So, Jacqueline, first off, questions for the superintendent?
Yeah, just two clarifications.
Okay.
Could you just briefly explain what exactly an alternative middle school would look like?
Yeah,
And then also more about embedded honors. I don't
yeah.
know the background on that.
How about I come back with a little bit more or deal with a couple of those offline, but more embedded honors is the longer. I'll send the student example of that just so people see it. But also on the middle school ed, it's just a separate middle school program. So it'd be almost like another little mini middle school, but the programming will be different. So from some of our students that the traditional large middle schools are really, they really struggle in, that sort of a program.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Danielle Bethel? Are you with us, Danielle? Danielle, going once, twice? Okay. Sharon?
Thank you. I do have
Yeah.
one question.
Sure.
Under the budget adjustment, the realignment and reductions,
Yep.
although not layoffs,
Right.
the 10 FTE and the 5 FTE, the elementary and the 10 and the 5. So those, we're moving those out of elementary and middle school instruction. But then later, under equity, my glasses keep fogging up. Under equity, you mentioned what we are looking to do is to lower student-to-staff ratios at Title I schools.
Yep.
And so you talked about expanding access through the general fund. So if we're moving 10 and 5 out, but then we're looking to put others back in, I guess I
So our staffing model is, it has been the staffing model for multiple years, where we staff our title middle schools at a slightly lower student-to-staff ratio than we do for our regular elementary schools. And this FTE amount reflects the ability to do that still. So the one of the equity strategies that we always have, and it's in the Gen Fund, is that as a strategy. And we account for the FTE all within the Gen Fund.
Satya, question for the superintendent?
Yes, thank you, Chair. In this presentation or in the budget, how will I know if the budget is allocated based on a cohort of students, let's say right from the elementary all the way to high school, whether it is STEM education for children from Black communities, and how are these dollars allocated, or how are the staff matched with the students so that we build the cohort?
So are you asking, do we have a cohort of kids that we are tracking through the system? I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
Are you allocating money for a cohort of kids starting from elementary so that we start adding programs to a group of students, whether it is enrichment program or extra teaching or support, so that we can build pipelines of students from kindergarten to high school for?
I don't have we haven't allocated in that way.
All right.
But you could share how you did, you could share with him how you did allocate.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so that's not like a no, it's just.
No, it's just
I'm not ready yet.
Yeah, no,
Which is
it's,
an acceptable answer, by the way.
we don't allocate based on like, we're not looking at income in kindergarten and saying we're going to spend $100 million or $100,000 on this group of kids, and then we're going to build programs through the system.
So how will we close the equity gap? Let's say children from Black community or Pacific Islander community, if we don't track them and their needs, so that how will we prepare them for higher level classes when they go to higher classes?
We actually monitor their achievement all the way through the system. And then we try to open up access points so embedded honors is a place where could be an open access point there. But, so we do track their achievement data.
All right,
Okay.
All right. Barbara?
I think she answered quite a bit of questions for me already, so I think I'm good.
You're good,
Yeah,
okay.
Thank you.
Kathy?
I'll have more later.
You have more later, okay. Lisa?
I'm good, I have no questions. Thank you very much for the presentation.
Okay. Levy?
Yeah, a couple things, just
Sure.
making sure that I was following correctly. I think I heard say that all of our, the entire budgeted revenues is 1,494,370.
Yes.
But the budget document or budget or the presentation that I saw said 367 instead of 370. So I just wanted to learn correctly. So that might be.
Okay, I'll look and see if we did if we transposed a number. And I'm having, Mike, you got that?
Yeah, the total budget number that's on page 33 in the proposed budget is the number that you're referring to, Levy? That's correct.
Which is, what's the number?
I'm looking at page 28. So on the
Right.
is that graphic, the pie chart?
Yep, it's the same number. If you can go to 28, you can go to 33. It's 1,494,367,253.
Okay. Anything else, Levy?
Yeah, I think it would be great since I'm participating online, if I could get a copy of the PowerPoint because the budget message, the formatting that I can see online is a little different. So
Yep.
just to make sure that I was tracking everything correctly, like the equity section, I don't see in the document that I'm looking at.
We'll get the PowerPoint out to you, and I've got a couple cleanups in my notes from things I didn't use and had duplicates, but I'll get those cleaned up, and so you can have the full script as well.
Thank you. And
I did follow it exactly.
The last thing I just want to say, I had my team at the nonprofit that I work in had a chance to work with some of the transportation staff, helping get food over all this many months that we were doing it, and it was every 5 days a week. They were there, no matter what the weather was like. If families were coming out. It was just a huge help. So I just want to say thank you to all the team that was involved in that. Mike was a big help in getting that set up. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Marty?
No questions right now.
Okay. Jesse?
Yeah, I have a couple. The first one is, I know you addressed this in your presentation, but I just wanted like a quick recap that's easy to understand. So with the SRO funds, since the contract has ended, where are the funds right now, and what is the plan for those funds moving forward?
I'll show you those when I show you the budget book. And right now, we're in the conversations around what is it that we need to keep our schools physically safe and secure. And we're in those with our Safety and Risk Management Department and our law enforcement partners, our district attorney's office. So no plan yet, but we're working on the plan, and 100% commitment that we want to have a secure system that keeps our schools safe without a regular presence of law enforcement. So we're in those conversations now.
Okay.
And that's why I didn't shift it, but I'll show you when I go through the budget book.
Okay, cool.
Go.
And then we talked a little bit about this during the presentation, about how dual language and CTE are both proven programs that increase graduation rates significantly for students. So what have we been doing to change our systems to fit the needs of our BIPOC students and get them involved in these programs? And then what are we going to do moving forward to increase that?
Probably a longer answer, but we have a really robust recruitment program for CTE across every single one of their programs has a recruitment strategy. We actually have a consultant that's helped us with that. CTEC especially has been especially innovative during a pandemic with how to recruit. And I was surprised at the recruitment for CTEC, and that's just one program, was almost on par with what we would expect in a normal year in the pandemic. So we have a whole variety of recruitment strategies, and it's built into our high school success funds. And I could ask Nicole, our lead on that, to provide a little more detail.
Okay, cool. And then one more. I have others, but I'll ask them later. But this one is, so right now we're preparing for a $9.4 billion biennium. Well, what happens if it comes in at the 9.1 as proposed, or I mean, even less possibly?
Well, yeah, a couple big assumptions are built in. One is the contingency is a little higher on purpose, but we also haven't bargained with our associations yet. And that's going to be a really critical expenditure as we work with our associations to settle contracts. So those are two ways. And then we also have the ESSER funds that we are allowed to backfill so that we don't have to cut programs. That's one of the allowable expenses with that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Oni, do you have any questions? Oni, are you?
No, I don't have any questions at this time.
All right, thank you. Tyson? Do you have any questions? No? Okay.
Actually asked the one I was looking for, so
Oh,
thank you.
you're, okay. Danielle, are you back? It doesn't appear that she's back, so we can move on, and now go to Mike.
Yeah. How about if I walk you through your budget book quickly, and then I'll turn it over to Mike. You're mentioning that I wasn't all that quick. Is that what you're telling me?
Did I say that?
No,
I
but
don't
you
think I
implied
said
it.
that, but
No, you didn't.
But you've been taking lessons from Dr. Sproles.
Yes, he's mentored me well before
Yes,
he
he
leaves.
has.
Ouch, ouch, Dr. Sproles. Okay, so if you take out your budget book, we've got highlighters and stickies, and I'm just going to walk you through kind of some key pages to look at. And then for those that didn't have questions, we will have plenty of time for more questions as well. So the first thing is if you go to page 9 in the budget message, I'm just going to point out an error in the budget message on page 9. It's the first section, and it looks like it's right after the introduction here. There you go. Yeah, right there. So page 9, clear down to the bottom, the second bullet is 750,000 additional transfer. The number should be 500,000 there. We caught that yesterday.
Okay, thank you.
On page 20 and 21, these are our enrollment projections that this is based on. How we staff is in there on page 21. And I'm just thinking these might be some places that you can refer to as you think back to some of the budget things. And then on page 25 is the budget assumptions. So that's where you see that we budgeted to the 9.4 million. So we try to tie all our assumptions into the budget document so everyone knows what it's based on. If you are new, page 29 gives you the fund descriptions. It just gives you an overview of what they are called. And Barbara asked where the summer school funds were funded or allocated, and they're in the grant funds 240. You don't see it here, but I just wanted to point that out. That's the fund with the summer school, ESSER, SIA. So just detail. On page 33, this is the big picture. The first slide I gave you with the big number 1.4 billion, that's the summary of all funds. So under the resources, total resources, you'll see in the far right corner, $1.4 million in the far right corner. That's all of our revenue coming in added up. When you go to the very next page, the first page was all the budget funds. This page is just Gen Fund. So it's called Gen Fund 101. It gives you the revenue, resources, and requirements, big picture. The transportation proposal is almost all the way down at the end. There's $34 million under 500 capital outlay for the transportation facility.
Why are the numbers different here than here?
This is a bigger, this is the full number. Yeah, I'll walk you through it when we're done too,
Okay.
just to tie you to the numbers. So then I'm going to go to the page 55, and this breaks down our resources or our revenue even further. And these numbers, for the most part, won't tie to anything in the budget presentation. This just gives you a little more fine-tuned description of our revenue. And under 3,100, again, on the very right-hand column under proposed, I just want you to notice that our state school fund revenue is actually $4 million less than it was last year in this proposed budget. And the reason for that is that slight decline in ADMW, and that we do 49% of the revenue in the first year. But that's the bulk of the resources that come into the Gen Fund, and really important that that's funded at a sustainable level for year after year, since it's our most important revenue source. Okay, and then page 89, about halfway down under capital outlay. Again, here's the transportation facility there, 34 million. Page 97 shows the transfers out of the Gen Fund into the other funds. So 5,200, middle of the page, that shows all the transfers. We're taking revenue out of the Gen Fund and putting it into special revenue type funds. You also see the 6.1 contingency there under 6,000 contingencies. The 36 million is about a 6.1% contingency. And then the last pages that I always think are really helpful is the FTE pages, and they start on page 103. And they just kind of tell you where we spend our dollars on people. So every one FTE is a full-time equivalent employee. And I think that's just kind of always helpful because that ties to all those budget adjustments. And if you go through those will all tie out to the FTE I shared in my budget message. Okay, and there was one more question I didn't tab here. What page, Sarah, is the safety and security budget?
71 it starts, and you're looking at
Okay, so page 72. The top 380, non-instructional, professional, and technical services. This is contracted services. We also do contracted services for a private security company that does after hours. So there's a number of different contracted services in there, but that is where the law enforcement contract previously lived. This is just a contracted service, so it doesn't tell you how we have to spend the money. That's contracted services there. So that's on page 72.
What line is that?
Right at the top, 380. About 5 down, and on the right and proposed. Okay. Now I'm going to turn it over to Mike. For those of you that are especially brand new, I would love to spend time with you if you want me to help you walk through the budget book in preparation for the next meeting. And then Mike's going to kind of talk to you about where we go from here to get to the next steps. And we'll be, especially for new people, if there's just some, little questions we can answer along the way in the next few weeks just to help you orient, happy to do that as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our Chief Operations Officer, who does not talk as long as Dr. Sproles or I.
Well, thank you for that comment
It is
and
a
compliment.
compliment, yes.
Thank you, Superintendent Perry. Okay, this will be super quick.
Of course it will.
I'm not going to go over all of the documentation that you have. For those of you who have been on the Budget Committee for a while, you've seen this before. And I think that it would be more relevant on the 18th to go over some of the roles and responsibilities and protocols. But what I would say is you will likely have questions. There's a lot of information that's been presented, and you've got a few hundred pages of budget document in front of you as well. So if you would be kind enough to submit your questions to Alice directly, and all of them by close of business on Tuesday, May 11th, which is a week from tonight, then what we'll do is we'll work with the Budget Committee leadership to determine the best way, the best methods to address your questions. In the past, we've given presentations when there's been themes of questions on certain topics. We've given presentations to the Budget Committee. We've also done reports. And then there's the vaunted Q&A documents that we could do as well. So just helps us process all of your questions if we can get them in and work with board leadership to determine the best way to address them. So, and with that, I think I'm done. Thank you.
Wow.
Whoa. I missed the joke you were supposed to add. Okay, sorry. Okay, the next item on the agenda would be the discussion of the next meetings. As Mike indicated, any questions need to go to Alice, and hopefully we all have Alice's email, right? This would be a good time for everybody to go right.
Right. Alice will send out a reminder.
Okay,
of when
that's
it's
good,
due.
yeah. That's where I was just about to have to go. Thank you, Alice and Christy. So if you have questions that you want answered, please send them to Alice by the end of business day, which is 5 o'clock on next Tuesday. Okay, any questions about that? All right. Our next meeting, the next time we will come together will be May 18th, and we will start looking at questions and possible presentations depending on the questions and what they include. If you look at the Budget Committee protocols for questions and deliberations, there's a process at the bottom, 4 steps that you need to go through. You may want to become familiar with that. And then that's where we are. On Monday, May 24th, this will be our opportunity for public comment for the first time. Levy had referenced that we needed to discuss how we were going to be taking public comment, and we need to make sure that's clear. The note I see at the bottom of the agenda indicates we will accept it written electronic form only. Using public comment sign-up form, instructions to submit public comment will be provided on the agenda for those specific meetings. That would be for the 24th, certainly. And then if we don't approve the budget on the 24th or make the recommendation to the school board on the 24th, then we would have a follow-up meeting on Tuesday, the 25th. If we don't move it propose it to the school board then we would do it on the 26th. Yes? Alice. Oh, right, okay, public 18th okay. Right, I see that, great. So on the 18th and 24th, we'll be taking public comment. And they need to send it in. Any further discussion, Levy, that you want to have about that?
Yeah, I just think we typically haven't had that many people show up, which is unfortunate. It's been a frustration of mine that we don't get more people to show up and give public comment. And I think last year was probably the most that we've had in a few years for the budget committee.
Mm-hmm.
There were times when we had maybe like 2 or 3 people. And I always appreciated the same people who showed up. So since we only have 2 opportunities to hear public comment, my So my suggestion in having this, open it up for community members is to see if they want to do it the way that we've done it in the past, which is allow a certain amount of blocks out of our meeting to actually hear people, either by phone, either to give public comment, or if we just want to have people send in written comments and we'll review those. So that was a clarification that I was seeking because I was not clear based on the note on the agenda.
Okay. Anyone wish to discuss this? Comments? Is there a motion of any sort to?
How much time does the public have in one meeting to talk?
As long as we want to let them go.
Okay, do we make that decision here, now, or later?
We could make that decision now. I mean, that would then put a limit on it. But we could say we would do it for an hour or whatever we want. But if that's what you want to do, it's not a requirement that we do it tonight. We could think about it, do it at the meeting on the 18th.
Okay.
Which again, that's when our first public comment will be.
Yeah.
So we'll need to let people know before then.
Your policy states that the chair, and I would say leadership, but the policy says chair, can decide how long to do public comment. So I think what maybe was helpful is, do you have any guidance you want to give committee leadership? And I think what I heard Levy say is he thinks written isn't enough access. He'd prefer, I didn't hear what you'd prefer, but that was my.
Marty had a comment, then we'll go back to Levy while he has a chance to think, and then I see Jesse's hand up.
Well, I think it's been clarified. I was just kind of confused because I thought the protocol was going to be what we're doing in the boardroom right now, which is taking written things and reading them individually and then getting a summary. And so it gives us time to think about all the comments that we're getting, not just react when people show up. And I don't know.
Okay.
I'm kind of confused.
Okay, Levy?
Yeah, I think given that we've not been, like I said, we haven't had that much participation in the past, to me it would feel like a very jarring change to go from that to only taking written public comment. My personal preference would be to allow a block of time.
How long a block?
30 minutes. Say that again?
How long a block?
30 minutes.
Okay.
No more than an hour, and
Okay.
However many people sign up in the past, looking at, that's been maybe 2 people, and we've gotten right on with our deliberations. And just allowing that opportunity for people to show up,
Sure.
I think that's important for me.
Okay, Jesse?
I was actually going to agree with Levy, just because, and I was actually going to suggest 30 minutes to an hour, so good call. But yeah, no, I just think that, especially with the budget committee, we get so few public comments in the past that it would be, I don't want to do anything that might have us get less and less input. I think more input's better than less.
Then, anyone else? Lisa?
I'm just wondering if maybe there's an opportunity for us to do both. I like the idea of having an in-person option. I think that's really important for us to be able to listen and hear the community. Also, if people have that opportunity to do something in writing as well, given the pandemic and given how the board is taking public comment, that might be congruent with that and also offering another opportunity.
Right, I think that makes good sense. Sharon? Satya?
You used to take people calling in or people coming in person, but I was told that after this social distance protocol, there can be limited number of people who can actually come in person or gather in the outside the building. So with this kind of hybrid with safety protocol, how do we balance between the necessary
I
protocols?
believe that would be up to the Budget Committee leadership,
Mhm.
Oni and myself, along with the superintendent and
Thank you.
the technology people to try to figure out, and Alice, to try to figure out how we balance this. What I'm hearing, and did you have another comment before I
Yeah.
make my summary? Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I'm supportive of allowing public comment. I agree with, let's start with 30 minutes and see how it goes. I think that's a reasonable amount, but if there's more, I think we should consider expanding that. The other thing, I've heard a lot of public comment about our public comment in the boardroom. The summary has morphed into maybe a sentence summarizing public comment versus actual summary of the public comment. So I would like us to look at whether or not the public comments can be read or a better summary given of the public comments.
Okay, I hear your concern. Christy and I and Oni and, again, the people that understand the technology and all, we will be discussing this. What I'm hearing in summary, unless someone wants to add, at this point in time, you would like to take written comments, which we can set a deadline for, have them sent to us. We all will need to commit to read them in advance of the meeting. We'll set the deadline early enough that they will be available, and then we will set up, hopefully, be able to set up some sort of public input time that will not, for the first meeting on the 18th, will not extend more than 30 minutes. And then depending on the number we have, then we can reevaluate that policy and look at the 24th. And if we have an excessive number, we could go to the 25th, because I know we all are going to want to be meeting more, and we're going to want to go to the 26th if we need to, because those dates are already in the calendar. And if you look at the agenda, it also says if we need more dates, we have more dates that we need to be prepared. So that would be my suggestion of where we start at and try to work all that out. Anyone have any disagreement with what I just said? I'm seeing some head nods. I'm seeing some people staring off into space. Craig wants to talk. Satya.
When do we have to, by law, pass the budget? When is the last day?
June 30th.
June 30th. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Sharon?
No, thumbs up.
Oh, thumbs up. Oh, okay. I was going, oh, okay. I missed something. Okay. Alice, I'm sure got that in minutes. Levy.
Yeah, I just wanted to, for clarification, my recommendation was not to invite people to show up in person.
Right, I understood that.
Yeah, so just wanted to make that clear.
Yeah, no, that would be
support.
electronic somehow. Yeah, for 30 minutes on the 18th would be the goal, which, as Levy's pointed out in the past, we haven't had 30 minutes worth of comment. So, all right, anyone else? Anything else on this topic? Going once, twice, 3 times, we are adjourned.
Thank you. Good job.